We turn now to the biggest state surplus in Minnesota history, $17.6 billion with a B dollars. Folks, to put that number in perspective, that surplus, just the surplus, is bigger than more than the entire budgets of more than a dozen states in this country. How in egads are we so flush with cash? Well, a leftover surplus the lawmakers couldn't agree on spending from the spring is there. And yes, strong tax collection, some of your money. So the $17.6 billion question I know a lot of you are asking tonight is, will you get some of it back? Well, today, Democrats who hold all the cards after the election made some big promises about their majority and how they plan to deliver.
The era of gridlock is over.
So starting in January, with this legislative trifecta, we will use this tremendous opportunity to help Minnesotans afford their lives.
This projected budget surplus means we can respond to Minnesotans' needs and deliver results.
I think they should have an expectation that we deliver immediate relief to them and then long-term reduction in cost to middle-class folks.
Now, if that sounds like a lot of pie in the sky language and not like a lot of concrete promises, well, that was the theme of the day. But Kent and others in the room did press those lawmakers for specifics about what relief actually would look like to you.
Yeah, we did, Jana. We tried, at least. And let's start with the obvious one, direct payments to taxpayers. Governor Walz started advocating for them last session, at the time calling for $1,000 rebates for individuals and $2,000 for families. But Republicans wanted more permanent tax cuts, and Democrats in the legislature wanted more focused tax credits for things like child care and funding for paid medical family leave. Today, the governor said all of those things are now possible, and that includes the direct checks.
It's no secret that it was received lukewarmly, I think, over by both chambers and probably bipartisanly. But I still go back to this. If you want to reduce some of the costs for the short run and make an impact on families, especially those who really need it, it's one of the most effective ways. So I am still going to advocate for direct checks sent back to people. I think the starting point would be that $1,000, $2,000 for family to make a difference.
But here's the thing. So far, the other two branches of that Democrat trifecta still aren't exactly committing to those payments. To be fair, they still have a lot of new members and need time to consider it. But here's what they said when asked about those checks today.
We have a caucus that has 20% new legislators in it in the Minnesota House. So we haven't gotten to the point in time where we're making budget decisions yet, but we certainly respect the governor's proposal to us. We'll certainly take it back and consider it within caucus.
I also respect Governor Walz's choices, and we have 14 new members, so we'll be discussing priorities in more detail this weekend, and he can propose his budget, and we will have a thorough conversation and probably some hearings on the issue.
Well, the governor and DFL leaders do seem to agree on some other forms of more direct relief, like eliminating the state tax on Social Security, but not completely, leaving it intact for the wealthiest Minnesotans. At least that's what they talked about today. They also committed to expanding funding for public schools and local government aid to cities and counties, which could help address the big jumps many people are seeing in property taxes, at least homeowners are right now. But keep in mind, the League of Minnesota Cities says it will take another year before that money would really make its way home.
Keep in mind that cities set their budgets once a year, and so the 2022 budget was set in the fall of 2021, and much of that did not anticipate the high inflation rates that are affecting everybody's pocketbooks.
So does that mean that people should be prepared for even more increases again next year?
You know, I think that's going to depend on whether the legislature does assist the cities and the counties and even the schools with some additional funding to keep those property taxes down. If that does occur, I think that people will definitely see a reduction in property taxes in 2024.
Now, for families in particular who might be struggling right now, the governor and DFL leaders did say that they are committed to finding ways to ensure, again, family medical leave for all Minnesotans and to make child care more accessible and affordable, including through tax credits. But again, even with the trifecta, anytime we talk about the legislature, it's always much easier said than actually done. Jana.
Well said, Ken. Thank you very much. And joining us now is Abu Amara. He's a frequent guest on our show here on Breaking the News to talk about the politics of this. Yeah. You were around with the House, was it, back with the last big surplus? So what really happens behind the scenes when you get a big lump of money?
So, to quote the philosopher Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems, right? And so you're going to see a lot of people enter the Capitol and say, hey, we've got a really important thing, whether it's housing, whether it's jobs, whether it's the economy. And a lot of these are meritorious, but ultimately this is going to have to go through a difficult legislative process. And a lot of things we see on the table now probably won't be on the table as we get to May.
Okay, well, many of the people then, that's what Kent was talking about, are saying, but I paid my taxes. I paid a lot in taxes. And Governor Walz's team said, yes, a lot of people paid a lot in taxes. So why can't they get that money back quickly?
Well, so part of it's an administrative issue. You heard in the spring, Governor saying he wanted to send money to Minnesotans. It was blocked by the Senate Republicans. Now that Democrats are in charge, if there's a bill that comes out fairly quickly, it still has to go through state government, the minutia of things, to actually get those checks out the door. And so I think it's going to be part of a bigger package that has to be negotiated with all 201 legislators.
Do you think they'll send checks?
I think ultimately it's going to happen, and here's why. Governor Walz, going into the last election, made a promise to Minnesotans. And he said, I wanted to send some of your money back to you, and I think he's going to be able to keep that promise.
He also ran on something called One Minnesota. It was an election that was close in a lot of different races, but One Minnesota was to mean that we are one state. And so I bring that up to say, Governor Walz, even with the trifecta, really shouldn't be saying, I'm going to reward my friends in this surplus. He's got to create One Minnesota, right?
That's right. And I think his legislative proposal, which will come out next month or in February, is really going to illustrate that, whether it be in greater Minnesota, local tax credits to help small communities, oftentimes that voted Republican. I think you're going to see some packages there. Education, another issue that really impacts greater Minnesota, oftentimes voting Republican, but you're going to see lots of money poured into education as well.
You and I were talking before we got on the show about $17.6 billion. It's a mind-boggling number. It's huge, right? But it's not like, and John Croman pointed this out, they just woke up today and there's $17.6 billion. Some of it's not there yet, right?
That's right. This is a projection. And so part of it is if the economy continues to move in the direction that it is, that's what we think will be on the bottom line in July when the actual budget year starts. And so, yes, this is still probably going to be a lot of money, most we've probably ever seen in Minnesota history, but it's not actually in the bank yet. And so I think as we get into session, there'll be another forecast, and that'll help inform what the budget's going to be.
Right, because we don't have inflation baked into this forecast, right? We're one of few states.
That's right. That's a major difference. But even if you adjust for that, it's still a significant amount of money.
I'm going to make you governor for 20 seconds. What would be the first thing that you would do if you were able to wave that magic wand with that money to show One Minnesota? What would you spend it on?
I would put it in education. I think coming out of the pandemic, lots of communities, both rural, urban, suburban, were impacted by kids not being able to go to school. I think channeling a lot of resources towards that makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to your campaign, but you still have to come on the show.
Thanks.
Thanks, Abu. We appreciate it.